The elevator doors opened to the 9th floor, and there it was again, her laugh. That laugh I used to hear every morning when she'd wrap her arms around me in the kitchen and steal a bite of my toast. Except now, it was coming from behind his office door. I stood there for a second, holding the reports I wasn't supposed to be delivering. The intern was out sick, and I happened to be the next guy loitering near the printer. Wrong place, wrong time. They didn't hear me. Or maybe they didn't care. Her voice floated through the door like perfume. Light, familiar, and entirely wrong. I didn't catch the words, just the sound. Soft, breathy, a version of her I hadn't heard in months. Not at home. Not with me. The receptionist glanced up, met my eyes, and quickly looked back down like I'd caught her stealing. I walked past, set the files gently on the desk, turned, and left. No knocking. No confrontation. I already felt like I'd interrupted something sacred to them, anyway. At the vending machine, I stared at the buttons like I didn't know how snacks worked. A guy from logistics walked by, nudged his friend, and said just loud enough, "Bet she's getting her promotion the old-fashioned way." Laughter. I bit down so hard on the inside of my cheek it drew blood. They didn't say her name. They didn't have to. Everyone already knew. Everyone had been joking about it for weeks. Everyone except me. She was my wife. And apparently the office's favorite punchline. That night, I didn't say a word to her. I just watched. I watched the way she threw her coat onto the back of the chair without looking at me. The way she hummed some nameless tune under her breath as she scrolled through her phone, grinning at something I wasn't meant to see. I watched her reheated takeout go untouched as she poured herself a second glass of wine, kicked off her shoes, and vanished into the bedroom without asking how my day was. She hadn't asked in weeks. Maybe months. Instead, she left the door half-closed, her laughter still echoing in my ears, not from home but from that office. From behind his door. I stood in the hallway, looking at the faint silhouette of her through the frosted glass of the master bathroom, her figure shifting as steam began to blur the edges. It should have been an ordinary evening. Instead, it felt like I was standing in a museum, staring at a woman I used to know, trapped behind glass. I barely slept. The next morning, I did something I never thought I would do. I called in sick. It wasn't a lie. Not really. There was something wrong with me. Something cracked. Like when you bend plastic too far and it doesn't break, but it doesn't bend back either. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at her coffee mug still warm from the morning rush. Lipstick stain on the rim. Her keys still on the hook. Her scarf missing. The expensive one she said was a gift from the team. The team must have had excellent taste. Cashmere. Monogrammed. I opened her laptop. Not to snoop. At least that's what I told myself. I just wanted. I don't even know. Clarity? A reason to stop imagining the worst? Maybe to find an email to HR or a Slack message that said something like, "Can you believe what they're saying about me and Mr. Wallace?" So ridiculous. But there was nothing like that. Instead, I found a calendar invite. One she deleted from her visible calendar but not from the app's back end. A repeating event. Fridays, 6 p.m. Location, Offsite Strategy Alignment, MW. MW. Marcus Wallace. No address. Just those initials. And a note on the latest one. Bring the red one. You know which. My throat tightened. I closed the screen. I told myself it still didn't mean anything. Maybe he was just particular about how his team dressed. Maybe the red one was a folder or a binder. Maybe she really was just that committed to the job. But then I remembered the red dress. The one I'd never seen her wear for me. Not once. The next Friday, I waited. Told her I was meeting up with a friend from high school. She didn't even ask who. She got ready slowly. Deliberately. Spent more time on her makeup than usual. Sprayed that same perfume I hadn't smelled on her before this new job. When she thought I wasn't looking, she smiled at herself in the mirror. Not a fake smile. Not a forced one. The kind of smile I hadn't seen on her face since before the promotions and the whispered rumors and the long nights in the MW initials. She left at 5:42. I followed. Not close, just enough to keep eyes on her. I parked across the street and watched her walk into the same building I'd seen in a Google Maps search last week, the Madison West Club. Private business suites on the top floors. Lobby access granted only by card. Soundproof rooms. Concierge discretion. She didn't hesitate at the door. Just swiped her pass, stepped inside, and vanished behind the golden elevator doors. I waited. I don't know what I was waiting for. Maybe for her to walk back out with a look of guilt and apology. Maybe for someone else to walk in after her so I could confirm everything and finally feel justified in the sick, sinking dread building in my gut. Instead, I got a text. From her. Don't wait up. It might go late. No emoji. No excuse. Just that. And I sat in my car, staring at the message, knowing full well that everyone in the office had known before me. That to them, it was a joke. A nickname. Something to whisper and smirk about at the water cooler. But to me, it was the start of something I couldn't unsee. I didn't drive home. I sat in the dark parking lot across from that building, the Madison West Club, for almost 2 hours. The same playlist looped twice on the stereo. I didn't really hear it. I wasn't even thinking. Not really. Just staring at those golden-lit windows high above the street, waiting for a silhouette to appear. Maybe hers. Maybe his. Maybe both. The worst part wasn't the silence. It was knowing exactly what I would have told myself if I had seen them. That I misunderstood. That they were probably discussing quarterly budgets in evening wear. That she didn't look happy to be there. That it was probably all still professional, despite the candlelit lobby and the fact that her wedding ring hadn't been on her finger when she left the apartment. I ended up sleeping in the car. Sort of. The kind of sleep where your eyes shut but your body doesn't rest. I woke up stiff and cold just as dawn started painting the sky, and I drove back before she could notice I'd ever been gone. Her side of the bed was empty. Neatly made. Like she hadn't been there at all. Maybe she hadn't. When she finally came home the next morning around 8:15, she had a smoothie in her hand and not a care in the world on her face. Hey, she said casually, like she hadn't just disappeared overnight. We ended up doing a marathon work session. Didn't want to wake you. I stared at her. I must have looked a mess, unshaven, still in yesterday's jeans, eyes bloodshot. She didn't even blink. Aren't you going to be late for your shift? She added, sipping from her straw, her lips smudging the lid with faint red. Not lipstick. Lip stain. The kind that stays on through things. I nodded and went to the bathroom. Closed the door. Turned on the fan. And I finally allowed myself to cry. Not loud. Not angry. Just slow, leaking tears that wouldn't stop. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I know how pathetic that sounds. Believe me. I wish I could say I was stronger. That I demanded answers. That I shouted or packed a bag or even said, I know. But I didn't. I was afraid that if I said it out loud, I'd collapse. Instead, I did something worse. I tried to act normal. Over the next week, I became a stranger in my own home. I watched her closely, how often she smiled at her phone, how she jumped when a text came through, how she started taking her showers at night instead of in the morning, sometimes twice a day. I watched how she started doing laundry without asking, always quick to grab her clothes first, sorting them faster than ever, like she didn't want me to notice something. I noticed. On Thursday, a package arrived. Small, square, wrapped in gold. I picked it up from the doormat. It had no return address. When she came home and saw me holding it, she froze. Just a beat. Not long enough for most people to notice. But I did. I ordered that for a coworker, she said quickly, grabbing it and rushing to the bedroom. Secret Santa thing. Not for me. No one does Secret Santa in April. That night, when she was asleep, or pretending to be, I went to the closet. She'd moved her things. Subtly. Slowly. Her bags were packed tighter. Her heels stacked in a neat row like they were waiting to be taken somewhere else. Her passport, which we usually kept in the drawer with mine, was gone. I opened her work tote. The same gold-wrapped box was inside. Unopened. But with a note attached now. Wear this Friday. I'll have the driver at 6 m. She was going again. And this time, I wasn't going to wait outside. Friday came too quickly. All day, I felt like a man with a countdown clock wired into his chest, ticking louder by the hour. She was calmer than usual that morning. Wore her softest sweater. Kissed me on the cheek like she used to, like it meant something. Said she might be late again, sorry, and blew out the door with her work bag over her shoulder like she hadn't left me emotionally unraveling every day this week. I didn't go to work. I faked a stomach bug. My manager barely asked questions, probably assuming I'd caught the same flu that was going around. I spent the entire afternoon in silence, lights off, sitting on the couch staring at the floor like it would start speaking to me. My thoughts were toxic, looping, dragging me deeper into some place I didn't know how to climb out of. At 5:30 p.m., she texted me. Dinner meeting tonight. Don't wait up. Love you. I stared at the word love. It looked like a typo. She came home last time around 8:15 a.m. I wondered if she even realized that I knew her lie by its pattern now. I wondered if she cared. At 6:07, she was gone. I waited 10 minutes before leaving. This time, I didn't stay across the street. I parked 2 blocks away and walked. I wore my old delivery company hoodie and a cap, pulled low. The front lobby at Madison West was even more polished than I remembered, gold trim, warm lights, fake smiling concierge. But they didn't even glance at me when I walked straight to the elevators. I already knew where I was going. Floor 34. The penthouse suite level. I'd done the homework. There was only one tenant up there, Marcus Wallace. He was listed in the business directory as an independent consultant, which sounded like something rich people call themselves when they don't want to be asked what they actually do. I didn't have a key card, of course. But when a couple came through the doors behind me, laughing and distracted, I slid in with them. Nobody said a word. The elevator was smooth, silent, too fast. My ears popped slightly. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in the small space. And then the chime. Ding. Floor 34. The couple stepped out to the left, down a hallway where soft jazz music played from somewhere invisible. I turned right. That's when I saw it. Suite 3401. The only one on that end of the hall. Frosted glass doors, gold handles. A single red light glowing from the card reader. And voices. Hers. And his. I walked closer. Pressed my ear gently to the side of the door, not breathing. Said you'd be wearing it, his voice rumbled. I didn't know if I should, she said softly. What if someone saw me in the lobby again? Again. I didn't move. You look incredible, he said. And then the worst sound. Not screaming. Not crying. Not even words. It was the clink of a glass being set down. The whisper of fabric sliding across skin. And her laugh. Not a forced one. Not a polite one. But the laugh she used to save for me. That involuntary burst of joy that used to come out when we watched stupid movies under a blanket or danced around the kitchen barefoot on Sunday mornings. That laugh. The one I hadn't heard in over a year. My legs gave out. I slid to the floor like a puppet with its strings cut. My back against the wall. Hands shaking. My throat burned, but I couldn't make a sound. I must have sat there for 10 minutes. Or an hour. Or a year. I don't remember. Eventually, I stood. I walked away. Down the elevator. Out the doors. Into the cold night that somehow felt hotter than fire. I didn't go home. Not because I didn't want to face her, but because I didn't know if I could face myself. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't even try. I drove for hours, mindlessly weaving through the city's veins, engine humming under me like a heartbeat I couldn't calm. At one point, I ended up parked outside a closed bakery we used to go to when we first moved in together. We'd sit by the window with coffee and 2 sweet muffins and talk about things that felt bigger than us, dreams, careers, vacations we couldn't afford. I remembered how she used to look at me, like I was enough. That version of her no longer existed. I finally made it home around 6 a.m. The apartment building was quiet, still half asleep. I sat in my car, slouched down in the seat like a coward, watching the front entrance through the side mirror. I don't know what I expected. Maybe for her to walk up holding a stranger's hand. Or maybe looking guilty. Anything that could confirm this wasn't just some twisted dream I'd had parked in front of that door. At 6:43 a.m., I saw her. Alone. No walk of shame. No panic. She looked refreshed. Confident. She had a small paper bag in her hand, probably some boutique pastry or overpriced breakfast wrap. She walked with the ease of someone who believed she had gotten away with something. She had. Because I hadn't said a word. When she came through the door, I pretended to be coming out of the shower. She smiled at me like she hadn't just spent the night wrapped in another man's arms, wearing a dress he picked out. She handed me the bag like it was some grand gesture. Thought you'd like a little treat, she said. I nodded. My hands didn't move. The bag sat on the kitchen counter, untouched. I'm going to sleep a bit, she added. It was a long night. I mumbled something God knows what, and she disappeared into the bedroom. As soon as the door closed, I locked myself in the bathroom. I turned the faucet on to drown out the sound of my breathing, which had turned ragged. In the mirror, I looked like a man who'd aged 10 years overnight. I wanted to scream. But more than that, I wanted to understand why. What did I do wrong? Was I too soft? Too average? Too predictable? Did she wake up one morning and decide that I was no longer enough? I couldn't take it anymore. I had to know everything. Not just what I suspected, but what was real. I needed confirmation, proof. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I opened her laptop again. This time, I didn't hesitate. There were no love letters. No graphic photos. Nothing that could get anyone fired in a court of law. But there were patterns. A hidden folder of calendar exports. She had a private Google account I didn't even know about, logged in with a different alias. I followed the trail like a detective, piecing together a timeline of dates, restaurant reservations, gallery visits. All of them on nights she claimed she was working late. Even the reservations had special instructions, table near the back. Mr. Wallace prefers privacy. Please ensure the champagne is chilled upon arrival. Discreet service requested. My stomach turned. She had created an entire world with him. I was no longer a part of her life. I was a background character in her play. A prop she returned to so she could maintain the illusion. The husband at home. The safety net. The decoy. Around noon, she emerged from the bedroom in pajamas, rubbing her eyes and yawning like nothing in the world was wrong. "You okay?" she asked. I smiled. I lied. "Yeah, just tired. Didn't sleep well." And that's when I saw something flicker in her face. Something small. Barely there. Almost. Disappointment? She didn't press it. She just nodded and kissed me on the forehead. It felt like a farewell. I knew in that moment she had no idea I knew. No idea I had followed her. No idea I had sat against the wall outside that suite while she unwrapped the lies she'd been feeding me for months. But I wasn't going to confront her. Not yet. I needed more. I needed to see how far she was willing to go. Because if she was acting, I wanted to know if she could make it to the final act without breaking character. The days that followed were a masterclass in performance, hers, not mine. I played the fool, and she played the faithful. She leaned into our routines with almost surgical precision, like she was trying to correct her missteps retroactively. She asked if I wanted to go out to dinner one night. She made banana bread from scratch the next. She even suggested we take a little weekend trip soon, just the two of us. I wanted to scream, not because she was pretending, but because she was so good at it. Meanwhile, I was unraveling. Slowly, quietly, like thread pulled from the hem of something once whole. Every gesture of hers felt like a weapon, every smile a rehearsed line, and all I could do was nod, thank her, and make mental notes. On Wednesday, I found something else. Buried deep in her nightstand drawer, wedged beneath a stack of unopened wellness magazines, was an envelope. No address. No stamps. Inside was a simple hotel receipt, printed in grayscale on premium weight paper. One night. 2 guests. Room 1207. Booked under a name I didn't recognize, but billed to Wallace Consulting LLC. It was dated 3 weeks ago. The same weekend she told me she was at a company conference in Denver. I held that receipt in my hands like it was a piece of bone from a crime scene. I didn't take it. I didn't even photograph it. I just placed it back, carefully, as if it might explode. And I waited. That night, she went to bed early, claimed a migraine, took 2 pills, drank half a glass of wine, and pulled the blanket over her head with a practiced sigh. I stayed on the couch, pretending to catch up on work emails. But my mind wasn't on spreadsheets. It was on the burner phone I had hidden in my coat pocket. Earlier that week, I'd picked up a cheap prepaid phone and installed a call recording app. I couldn't live in suspicion anymore. I needed documentation. Something undeniable. Something I could hear again and again if she ever tried to deny it all. So I called her. Blocked number. I stepped outside into the hallway, using the phone's quiet mode and holding my breath as the call rang. She answered on the 3rd ring, voice low and cautious. Hello. It was her other voice, the one I hadn't heard in years. Soft, airy, almost flirtatious. I didn't say a word. Hello, she repeated, just a hint of annoyance now. Then I heard it. Mallory. A man's voice. His voice. Marcus Wallace. Is that you? He said, and then laughed. You don't have to whisper. He's probably passed out watching baseball again. She giggled. I nearly vomited. You scared me, she said. I thought it was him for a second. No chance, he replied. He's a ghost when you're with me. Don't worry, I'm not sharing you anytime soon. She laughed again. You're terrible. I know. But you like terrible. Click. I ended the call. I didn't need to hear more. My hands were shaking so violently I dropped the phone onto the stairs. It bounced once and landed face down. I stared at it for a long moment before picking it up and walking back inside. She was still asleep when I checked on her. But her breathing was too rhythmic, too even. She wasn't asleep. She was waiting for me to fall apart just a little longer. I sat in the chair at the foot of the bed, where she couldn't see me. I stayed there all night, just watching her back rise and fall under the covers. I imagined the words I wanted to scream. I imagined tearing the closet door off its hinges, holding up that hotel receipt, and asking how she'd ever had the guts to stand next to me and still look so calm. But I didn't move. Because I wasn't done collecting the pieces yet. This wasn't about rage anymore. It was about truth. Cold, unfiltered, undeniable truth. And I had one more step left to take. I spent Thursday preparing for Friday like a man planning a heist. Not with blueprints or explosives, but with cold calculation, quiet rage, and a newfound clarity I hadn't felt in weeks. Months, maybe. I'd stopped asking myself why she did it. There were no answers that would fix anything, no explanations that could make the lie sting less. I didn't care whether she fell for him, or just for the lifestyle. What mattered was that she'd made me into the punchline of a story she told behind closed doors. I was done being the joke. So I made a plan. It started with a phone call, one I made from a local hotel lobby where I'd reserved a conference room under a fake name. I told the receptionist I was shooting a corporate promotional video and needed the space to feel natural, not staged. She didn't ask questions. I paid in cash. I borrowed a camera setup from a friend who freelanced wedding videos. Told him I was testing lighting for a side project. He didn't care. The world keeps spinning while your life unravels. I also borrowed a suit. Not mine. Not something she would associate with me. Charcoal gray, tailored shoulders, black dress shoes so polished they looked like they'd never touch pavement. I even wore cologne. Not my usual. Something expensive and unfamiliar. Friday arrived like a storm on a windless day. She was radiant. That's the part that still makes my chest ache, even now. She wore the red dress again, the one she'd worn for him. Her hair was pinned up with surgical elegance, and her makeup was layered just enough to blur the truth. When she kissed me goodbye, I didn't flinch. "You sure you'll be okay with leftovers again?" she asked with a smile. "I'll manage," I said, matching her tone. "Don't work too late." She nodded, slung her purse over her shoulder, and walked out like she hadn't just been rehearsing betrayal all morning. I waited 30 minutes. Then I left too. She didn't know I had cloned her keycard. Last week, when she'd passed out after one of her wine nights, I'd used a basic magnetic reader, borrowed from the same tech friend who'd helped me build a custom gaming rig last year. He thought I was trying to upgrade a home security setup. I let him think that. I arrived at Madison West shortly after she did. I'd timed it. She always entered through the east entrance. I came through the west, using the cloned card to ride the elevator up to the 34th floor. Same hallway. Same door. But I didn't knock. I waited. 35 minutes passed. Long enough for the champagne to be poured, the catching up to happen, and for her guard to drop. Then I rang the room. A pause. Some fumbling sounds behind the door. Then her voice, muffled and half-laughing. 1 second. The door opened slowly. She didn't recognize me at first. I stood there in that unfamiliar suit, holding a fake tablet and a clipboard, wearing glasses I hadn't needed in years. I cleared my throat, keeping my voice low, and clipped. Delivery confirmation. "We're filming testimonials down the hall. Just need the signature of the primary tenant." Oh, she blinked, covering herself with the satin wrap that had slipped halfway off her shoulder. "Sure, just give me a sec." And then I saw him. Marcus. In the mirror behind her, half-dressed, casually sipping from a glass like this was just another Friday. His face didn't register me. Why would it? I was invisible to him. A name. A placeholder, a formality in her life that made her look grounded on paper. She turned back and signed the clipboard. As she handed it over, our eyes met. And I dropped the act, just for a second. Not with words. Just with the look on my face. Her smile collapsed. Like glass under pressure. And then I turned and walked away. I didn't need the footage. I didn't need a confrontation. I needed her to see it. I needed her to realize the stage she'd built was crumbling, because the audience had finally stood up and walked out. I got back in my car and drove home, faster than I should have. My phone buzzed 3 times. I didn't answer. I knew what the messages would say. Questions. Excuses. Panic. But I had one last step left. I printed everything. The photos. The text logs. The call recordings. The calendar history. I compiled it all in a folder, labeled with her name. When she got home, if she dared, I'd be ready. But this time, it wouldn't be a performance. It would be a finale. When the door opened, it was almost midnight. She stepped in slowly, heels in hand, hair undone, shoulders tense. The apartment was quiet. The lights were off, except for one lamp in the corner, casting a golden pool across the coffee table. I sat in the armchair across from it, my posture calm, my breathing steady, the folder in front of me like a loaded weapon. She froze when she saw me. "Kyle," she said softly, unsure if I was going to yell, cry, beg, or break. I didn't do any of those things. Instead, I nodded toward the folder. Sit, I said, not coldly, not angrily, just firmly. She moved like she was walking toward a cliff's edge. She sat, slowly. She didn't touch the folder. You know what that is? I asked. She didn't answer. I think you do. Still silence. I took a long breath. I had played this moment over in my head 100 times, each ending with a different kind of explosion. But now that it was here, I felt no need to rage. I had lived in her lot long enough. My freedom wasn't in punishment. It was in peace. I'm not going to scream, I said. I'm not going to destroy anything. I don't even need you to explain. I already know. She opened her mouth, closed it again. I want a divorce, I said, and the words came out as smoothly as if I were ordering coffee. She flinched, but she didn't cry. I'll be fair, I continued. I won't drag your name through the mud. I won't send this file to HR or your parents or anyone else. I'm not interested in revenge. I'm interested in moving on. She finally spoke. Her voice was brittle. Kyle, I made a mistake. I smiled, but not kindly. No, Mallory. A mistake is forgetting someone's birthday or saying something you regret. What you did, that's a choice. One you made over and over. And the worst part? I think you genuinely thought I'd never find out. Her shoulders collapsed. Her eyes dropped to the folder. For the first time, she looked truly small. I don't hate you, I said after a moment. I wish I did. That would have made this easier. But I loved you. Deeply. And losing that love was the hardest part. But now, I think I'm ready to let go of the pain, too. She tried to reach across the table. I gently pulled my hand back. No more performances, I said. You don't need to pretend anymore. Not for me. She looked like she was about to speak again, but I stood up. I'll sleep on the couch. You can have the bed tonight. In the morning, I'll go stay with my brother until we figure out the logistics. I started walking toward the hallway. Is there anything left to say? She asked behind me, her voice almost a whisper. I paused at the doorway. There's nothing left to say, I replied. But there's everything still ahead to live for. And for the first time in months, maybe even years, I felt the weight lift from my chest. I wasn't her husband anymore, but I was myself again, and that was enough. 6 months later, I sat in the same bakery we once loved, this time alone, with my own coffee and a dog-eared paperback. The sun streamed through the window, warming my face. My life was quieter now, simpler, and somehow brighter. I had found peace not in the confrontation, but in the release, and I had learned something unexpected. Sometimes, the strongest thing you can do isn't to fight to keep what's broken now. It's to walk away with your dignity intact and your heart open to something better. I wasn't a fool anymore. I was free.